Hey squad, welcome back. Now we're continuing our short series on must-know music production terms. Now if you haven't seen the other videos that I've done in this series, make sure you click the links on the screen or in the description. Now in today's video, I'll be covering 3 crucial terms that you must understand if you're working in music production. And these are normalization, distortion, and clipping. Now we're going to be digging down and figuring out what these terms are and how they apply to your production process. As always, do remember to support me on my musical journey at ducebeats.com, but for now, let's get right into it. Okay, so for today's demonstration, I'm going to be using a guitar section from a song I recently recorded. Let me give you a quick sample of it. Okay, cool. I mean, you can hear a bit of drums there in the background just to add a bit of rhythm to what's going on. So that's the clean version of the guitar. And the first thing I want to demonstrate is how normalization works and how you can actually use it in your productions to sort of add more gain to audio recordings that might need a bit of a boost in gain. Okay, so let's mute the clean version. Let's come to this one right here. This is exactly the same as the one above, but this is the one that we're going to be doing normalizing on. Okay, cool. So let's go into it. Let's just double click on it to pull up the audio editor. And first thing you want to do is if your editor is on track, you want to make sure it's on file. Another way of doing this is going to Window and going to Open Audio File Editor, and it will bring up the dedicated audio file editor window. We'll work in this one for now. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pull everything in so we can see the entire WAV file. Cool. Normalization. First thing we need to understand is normalization is a means of searching for the loudest peak in your audio file and using that peak as a reference and bringing that all the way up to 0 dB, and everything else within that audio file is increased exponentially. Okay, so let me demonstrate that. The first thing we want to do is look for a peak, and what I'm going to do is use a key command, Shift P, and right here within this audio file, this is our peak. There's another way of doing this, which is use the key command Control G, and you will pull up the change gain window, and we've got some options here. First thing we're going to do is hit search maximum, and Logic will search the entire audio file and see where the highest peak is. Now it's telling us that that peak is minus 3.5 dB, which I believe it was this one right here. Okay, so that gives us a few decibels of headroom. So the point between here and 0 dB, which this top line or this bottom line represents. Okay, now if we were to increase this, look at what happens here. We're going to increase by 1 dB. Now down here, this tells us we've got another 2.35 dB of headroom before we clip or get into distortion. Yeah, if I add another one, we're really close to the line. So if I was to action this and hit change, I would be able to raise the overall volume of this audio file. So let's do that anyway. Okay, so as you can see, everything has been increased and it's all based on this peak right here. Okay, let's undo that because there's another way of doing this. And the other way is, as I mentioned, called normalize. Now, the first thing you want to do is you select all. So Command A, or you can come up here and go to select all. The entire file has already been selected. For example, if we had this section selected before, Command A to select everything, okay, because we're looking at addressing the volume of the whole audio file. Now, the key command you want to normalize is Control N. Okay, and if we hit process now, you will see that everything has been increased again. But if you notice here, this peak is pretty much touching that line. And if I was to go to Control G to pull up this window, let's put this back to 0. Now, if I was to hit search maximum, okay, you can see the maximum is 0 dB. So basically this whole audio file has been maximized all the way up. So you're not going to get any more volume out of this without clipping. Okay, now let's play that back and we'll compare what the audio sounded like before and after normalization. So this top one is the unprocessed and this bottom one is the normalized. Let's actually start with top one. Okay, cool. So there is a significant difference in volume between the two. It's maintained its integrity in terms of the quality of the sound, but it's just louder. That's how we use normalization to actually boost up the overall volume of the audio to its maximum peak before distortion. Right, now let's move to distortion. And distortion can be used in a creative way, but ultimately you want to avoid distortion when you're working, because distortion is actually a destructive effect that comes when you overload or overdrive your audio and force it beyond the boundaries of your meters. Now, the reason why distortion effects are often used in music production is the effect you get when you overdrive, especially with analog gear, your audio signal through certain types of equipment and amplifiers. You can create a really interesting tone and shape of your sound, whether it be guitars or vocals or even drums. Using some level of distortion can actually be really creative and quite pleasing within a mix. However, there are different ways to do it, and if you are choosing to use distortion within your production, always try and maintain some level of control so that you can alter the amount if you've added too much or if you've added too little. So let me demonstrate that now. Okay, now I'm just going to play back this guitar with a distortion effect. I'm actually going to switch them on as we go along. Okay, so this is the file, and this is how distortion can be used creatively, and usually with guitars, but you can use distortion to enhance or to alter the sound of pretty much any element in your audio production. Okay, now you, if you're a guitarist, or you may well have much more advanced or better or more pleasing distortion effects on your pedal board or on your amp or just in your plugins. But this is just to demonstrate what distortion can do in terms of altering the sound and just giving your sound a different edge. And all I've got here is got a Logic pedal board loaded up. None of these are switched on. The only thing I've got switched on is a bit of delay, and then I'm using the Distortion 2 plugin just to add that distortion effect, and it adds that sort of character that I'm looking for in terms of my production. Okay, so that's how distortion can be used creatively. And the other important thing about this is I have control over the amount of distortion. So let me show you what that's about. So this is the amount of gain. And this is the amount of drive. So let's take the drive all the way off. Bypassed. Back in. And the tone. And again, you know, I've got control. That's the point I'm trying to make. You can even choose from here the different sort of distortion character that you want. So using distortion in this way as a plugin gives you a lot more control than if you actually distort the audio file, which is what we're going to do next. Okay, so let's switch this off and we come to this one down here. So again, this is clean, just got the amp on there. Okay, cool. So now we're going to double click on this, pull up the audio editor window and get that all in there. Open this up again in the audio file editor. Now clipping is when you drive the gain of your audio signal way beyond 0 dB. And what the program then does is it shaves off all of the transients that exceed the 0 dB threshold, and you then have a clipped file just like this. But the thing is, you can actually add a distortion effect to your audio without actually clipping the audio file. We are going to distort this audio and actually wrecking it somewhat in order to create a distortion effect. Okay, now to do so, let's first of all select all, Command A. Okay, and that's done. And then use the normalize function, Control N. I say yes. Okay, so we've hit our peak there. And the next thing we do is we're going to go to Control G, search maximum. And now we're going to let's add some more gain to this to drive it over the threshold. You can see it's already clipped. I've just added 1 dB of gain. It's already clipped, but I'm going to go crazy with this. I'm going to go up to 12 dB of gain. And you can see the relative change. We've increased the overall volume of the audio file by almost 300%. Okay, and now we're going to hit change. And there you go. Now, this audio file is wrecked. Okay, however, let's have a listen to what it sounds like. Okay, let's just bring the volume down on the fader just for a second. Now that might work for some, you know, but what's actually happened is I've no longer got any control as to how much distortion I might want to add or take away. That's now fixed to the audio file. And because Logic knows that this file has now exceeded the threshold and gone and clipped at the tops have been shaved off, all of these transients. Now, what Logic is doing is using very clever algorithms, sort of anti-aliasing algorithms, to use noise shaping to make the sound not so horrible, because normally this would sound absolutely dreadful, clips and pops and all sorts. It will be horrible to listen to. But because the technology is quite advanced, by using noise shaping to sort of somehow make the guitar still sound fairly decent. Okay. So now what you want to avoid is when you're recording, you don't want to record your audio clipping and like this, okay? You want to record leaving a certain amount of headroom in your audio. Let's undo that. This is the version after normalization. Let's take it back a bit more. One more step, undo, normalize. And this was the original file. So when you record, you leave yourself a certain amount of headroom, and headroom is the point between where the peak is to the 0 dB threshold. And now you have something to play with. Also, remember that if you choose to distort the audio file, as I did, by increasing the gain by an exaggerated amount, if you're satisfied with the outcome, great. But remember, sometimes you end up with a limited amount of undo steps for sample editing, okay? So bear that in mind. If you start messing with the audio and you haven't got a backup, you can get yourself into trouble if you sort of overdo it. Okay, now I hope you found the video useful. Now these terms are really important irrespective of what role you play within the music production process, and it really empowers you when you're in the studio. As always, do remember to like, comment and subscribe. It's always great hearing from you, so drop me your feedback and your questions in the comment section. I'll always do my best to get back to everyone. I'm going to be posting more and more on my other social media platforms, so do remember to check those out as well, including supporting me on my musical journey at ducebeats.com. And finally, like the rest of the MTTC squad, don't forget to switch on your notification bell so when my next video drops, you'll find out straight away. You take care until next time. I'm Dr. Duce. Peace.